Well, if I think about myself, I am definitely the turtle, not the hare. It took me all this time to get where I am. So, you know, but yeah, definitely it took a long time. There was a lot of struggle. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. Being an
Mm.
artist is a very a difficult thing to be, especially, you're trying to make a living, trying to get by. But I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I mean, I am
Oh.
happy with who I am and where I am. I couldn't be happier. So, this is, to me, it's a thrill to be here and to have all this around me, and I look forward to every day.
Kwe, Ninda Louising Pam Palmater, and I'm the host of this show, The Warrior Life. I'm an Indigenous lawyer, professor, author, and activist from Ugbaganjig, which is Eel River Bar First Nation, which is part of the larger Mi'kmaq Nation. My motto is education for action on Indigenous rights, social justice, and protecting the planet. And on this podcast, you're going to get an education of a different kind. You're going to hear from Native peoples of all backgrounds, artists, authors, musicians, and academics, as well as land defenders, water protectors, advocates, and leaders of all kinds. And in their own way, they are all on the front lines of Indigenous resistance, resurgence, and cultural revitalization. And this episode, definitely going to be one of my favorites because we have another Mi'kmaq artist in the house. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Warrior Life podcast. I'm your host, Pam Palmater, and I am so honored to be joined today by one of my favorite artists of all times, the amazing Alan Syliboy. I'm so excited to have him on this podcast, and you will be too, because I'm not the only one who has admired and loved his artwork for decades. In fact, the very first piece of artwork that I ever bought that was like official artwork that you put in a frame and hang on a wall that I hung in my house was a print from Alan Syliboy that represented grandmother and grandfather. There was just something about it that really spoke to me. It gave me a feeling of being connected to my ancestors, even though my own grandparents or aunts and uncles, cousins had passed on. It just really always reminded me that they're still always there. And so what I used to do when I lived in Halifax, my home reserve is in New Brunswick. So every time the kids and I had to go from Halifax and drive to New Brunswick, we always made a pit stop at the trading post in Millbrook First Nation to see if anything of Alan's was there, just anything at all, in the hopes that we could buy something. And you're all going to be impressed by his many artistic talents because this guy is literally doing it all. He's a painter, an author, a spoken word artist. He even has his own music band. I mean, he's literally doing it all. So we're going to talk to Alan about all of this and more. But I want to welcome you here, Alan. Thank you so much for being on the Warrior Life podcast.
Great. Thank you, Pam.
It's so great that you're doing this because I know you're doing so many other things at the same time. And I've had other artists on the show, but I've always wondered if I could ever get you on the show because you're the one I just look up to so much. And here we are, and I hardly know where to start, but let's just start off with, how about you introduce yourself the way you like to and tell us about the community that you're from.
I'm from Millbrook First Nation, and I'm a Mi'kmaq artist or multimedia artist. And I was born in Millbrook, and I still live here. I have not moved. My So this is where my roots are. Have always been, and I have not left here. So I I think, to me, that was part of the reason that my career has turned out the way it has because I decided to stay here and work in part of this community.
I love that when people are rooted and grounded in community, in your nation. I mean, clearly you've always been a Mi'kmaq, and I think that is so amazing. What a way to stay connected to family and friends and other territories, and of course, you just have so many amazing things that are happening from Millbrook First Nation headquarters. I've always loved Millbrook too. So okay, I've always wanted to know a little bit about your journey as an artist because I think a lot of people have very big misconceptions about art and the journey and things like that. Is art and creativity something that was a part of you when you were a little boy, for example? Like, did you know, oh, when I grow up, I want to be an artist? Or is that something that developed later on?
Well, I don't think I had any idea what an artist was or any concept of that. Really, it was just I went to a Catholic school, and up to that point, before school, I was fluent in my language. But there was, a letter from the church that we weren't to speak Mi'kmaq anymore. So my parents, for some reason, bought into that, and they stopped speaking Mi'kmaq to us in the house. And so I went to school without Mi'kmaq and my first language, and so it was a very difficult transition for me to go to school and not be able to communicate properly. So school didn't really go well for me. So as a result, I think I did badly there and didn't adjust very well. So I would draw. I would draw on whatever I could find. We didn't have art classes. In fact, if I got caught drawing on anything, that I had to pay the price every now and then. So, but that was the only thing that actually was my refuge in school. So, and my classmates were the first sort of positive reinforcement I ever had in school. That was the only bright spot for me. If I drew something, they liked it and they appreciated it. So I was just there marking time really until I got out of there, and that's where life really started for me after. And when I left school, I was working for my Uncle Fred at his cabinet shop and making kitchen cabinets. And one day Shirley Bear came recruiting for a program in New England. And she met my grandmother, Rachel Marshall. She was also a chief at one time. And so, she said, "Well, you got to see my grandson Alan. He's a he does art." And so I met Shirley Bear for the first time, and she recruited me, and I ended up in New England for several months learning art practice, and it was a very uh, forward kind of program she was doing. She was funded by I think Ford Foundation and AIM, I think as well. And so the idea was to make Mi'kmaq people or Indigenous people to teach on Indigenous communities, which was very leading edge, even now, because we're always taught from someone else from out of the community. So that was revolutionary, and Shirley Bear was revolutionary. Her and Peter Clare, were activists, and so I had that influence of being with her. Everything was brand new. I was learning every day from incredible artists in New England. So it changed, from being a very small community, uh, very isolated, to I'm in New England, in Boston, in New Hampshire, all over New England, learning from these incredible artists, and everything was just fantastic. That changed my whole career. Everything about what I was doing up to that point, surely it changed everything and made me I became an artist because of
Mm.
her. If that didn't happen, maybe I'd still be at the cabinet shop. Who knows? But life was so amazing after that, and I thank Shirley and Peter for I was part of their journey, and I was there when it was happening. It's amazing when I think about it. I think about it all the time. I was how lucky was I to be there.
It's incredible. I think sometimes people underestimate the power, the influence, and the knowledge that comes from people who want to lift you up, people who want to mentor you, people who want to share what they know. They're not gatekeeping. They're like, here's some opportunities. Like all of that has clearly made such a huge difference. Now, I understand you also had some formal-ish training in the sense of you went to, an art college. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, after the program in New England, where I spent about 3 months in training, then we did about 3 months on the road, going to different communities in New Brunswick, PEI, and Nova Scotia, also in Maine as well. So we taught workshops there, and when that was finished, I went back at the cabinet shop, and then but eventually I want to do art again, and or I was quite interested in it. So I went to the art college, the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, probably in the 1975, around that time. And I was there for about a year and a half. I really didn't have an idea that I was going to graduate. I just wanted to see what this was about. If I could learn about art, and actually I spent more time interviewing artists or people from all over the world. I spent more time in a coffee shop than anywhere else, I think, there. But I was talking, communicating, and that's where my education at the art college. That's where I learned things from people, and just talking to them was a great experience. I left the art college, and years later, I was voted on the board of directors of NASCAD as well. So for a dropout, that's not too bad, I guess, to end up on the board.
No kidding. It's like you're taking over. But I love that. I love how Native people work like that. There's so much, and even in the art world, how everyone's connecting and sharing information and insights, and you see what other people are thinking, their struggles. I love how it's like that multitude of things and people had an influence on your art or your path as an artist. I just find that so interesting. I'm also wondering too, the inspiration for the type of art that you do, because you're such a well-known artist and you have a style. You know how people will look at a piece of art and say, "Oh, that's clearly Haida art." Like it's a very clear style. Or Norvell Morrisseau. It's like, okay, that that's his art. You have that kind of art too. So I'd love to hear more about what was your inspiration behind that style?
Well, my first art lessons, actual conventional art lessons, was with Shirley Bear. I mean, she got me supplies, painting supplies, taught me how to use color and brushes, and so it gave me a start. She dropped me off at a lake, and I was to paint that lake, and I remember that so well. And so I was started to paint, and she was my first teacher. And then she was a typical painter as well. She did like portraits and landscapes, uh, like painters do, but she had the idea that we have to have some sort of purpose. We can't just be regular painters. We need to have direction. And she found the book of petroglyphs, was from the museum in Nova Scotia. I think it was all these tracings of petroglyphs, and brought them to me, and we looked through them and studied them and decided this is our direction. Because petroglyphs weren't known to us, but they weren't known to Mi'kmaq people in general, or anyone really. They were unknown because they were, that kind of communication, that kind of culture was taken from us. So my whole life has been researching and doing petroglyphs, reclaiming them, bringing them back, and that was the cornerstone for my whole career, my whole life.
To bring that back to someone who were told not to learn the language when you were younger because of this colonial world that we were being subjected to someone who is like bringing culture, relatively unknown parts of it back and making it commonplace, you know? Now people talk about the petroglyphs and what they mean and how important they are to our culture. Um, so some of the things that you paint, it almost looks like, so for example, when you're painting or drawing or painting on drums, a moose, for example, it looks like there are things that go in and out of the moose. It's not just like a static picture of a moose. It looks like there's movement and other things happening. Can you talk about like how you do that? And am I even reading that correctly? That there's supposed to be like it looks like some kind of movement.
Well, I think that was actually one of the ideas that I thought I didn't want it to sit there flat and sort of, uh, you know, I wanted to have some life and some movement to it. To me, that was important, that idea to try to accomplish that. And so that's what I try to do. I try to put movement and some kind of a flow that you can follow on, like a moose design, for instance. There's a line that goes through the mouth and right through the moose to the back, and that line is on all the moose that I've seen at the petroglyphs. So all my moose have that line that goes through it. So I know that was part of something important that Mi'kmaq did, because they did it with every moose that I saw in the petroglyphs. So I continue that. I continue that on it, and a lot of my art too. I do designs, but I want it to be something that will fit into the petroglyph. That will be a contemporary, a new design, but it has those elements of the past that will fit. You could put it in with the others, and it'll fit together. So that's actually what I try to do as well. So I'm thinking that whole process through, and like a butterfly design that I did, and it looks like a petroglyph design. That particular design ended up as a gold coin for the mint, and it was the first Mi'kmaq gold coin, and it's still an important design for me because it lives with me all the time. And the red crane also was another one. There was a crane figure in the petroglyphs, and painting in red for red ochre, making it sacred, to me made sense, and that's where red crane came from.
Wow. Like I never thought before about how all of these things were related and that it could even be stylistic or connected to something as old as petroglyphs, right? Because you never know what our ancestors were thinking, what they were doing. Like one of our ancestors' hands did at least one of those petroglyphs. And so the fact that you're connecting those two is so important. Um, when I think about your art, like, there's just so much. I mean, you're very prolific. But the picture that I bought, the very first thing that I ever bought of yours, it's like got the grandmother and grandfather. But there's like a whole bunch of things happening. I mean, it's not just movement, but there seems to be connections and things. Can you talk a little bit about what that specific piece means, where you got the inspiration for it? Because it's just, I look at it every day.
Well, to, with the petroglyphs, and I got to see the petroglyphs. Of course, I had the book, but I also went to Kejimikuje and the Barrens, and I got to see them, up close. And to me, they look like collages. I mean, they look like they were all interconnected. Like there was one big rock, but on that rock there was so many designs. And I think my grandfather, grandmother is sort of that idea that I saw it from a larger piece, and I incorporated other parts that I could remember, or that I recalled, and put it in this piece. And so, grandmother, grandfather is the source of everything. It's where the wisdom and everything comes from. That. And so, it to make as put the all those petroglyph elements in there, and it looks Mi'kmaq, but I also want it's an edge, because
Yeah.
my designs, I try not to make them uh, romantic. They are
Mhm.
have an edge to them. They're Mi'kmaq. Petroglyphs to me have an edge, and I want to keep that edge. I want to make sure that I'm still, that I have that Mi'kmaq essence about them. To me, that's important, and that's what I try to protect, and I try to put it in. Like I said, this could fit in with the rest of the petroglyphs, and it wouldn't be, it would be just, it would fit fine.
Yeah. And it's so identifiable. It's like, oh, that's exactly how they drew, like, that infamous petroglyph of a woman, and what that woman looks like, or the other things. It's just, I love that connection. I think it's really, really important. Which takes me to something that I've noticed that you have done on social media forever, and I love it. I love waking up, in addition to looking to my grandmother and grandfather picture, is something that you have called the daily drum. For people who've never heard of it, can you talk about this daily drum, what you're doing, and what made you decide to do that? Because I love it. I love seeing all the different drums.
Well, Facebook was new. We're just on Facebook. We just started, and it's all new to everybody. And we're looking for content, right? You're looking for what are we going to put on it. Of course, I'm an artist, so of course it has to be art. But and then we decided that I had an assistant also. He helped me uh, with these ideas, and so we ended up putting a drum on there, and I think we did it for a few days, maybe a week, and that was supposed to be the extent of it, because I mean, you post something, and then you post something else, but the backlash from it, we just had to do it again, because there were so many complaints of that. They want their morning drum, and so that was the reason. There is one, because we could not stop once we started, and it's just. But it gained momentum. But that's where my audience comes from, and that's
Yeah.
what I love. I love that, the audience is big, but also in Mi'kmaq, and just all the Indigenous world. That I'm be able to connect, person to person with them. I put my art out there, they see it, I see theirs, we're communicating. That was, to me, that changed everything, because it wasn't a gallery that promoted me. I didn't have an agent. It was all, we sort of made it up as we went, and we were lucky that it succeeded as well as it has.
It's amazing, because when I think about it, the traditional, like in the older days, and I know they still do it now, there'll be like an art show that's on for a certain amount of time. You show a certain number of pieces, or that you have to go to a gallery where we might only see a couple of your pieces. Here, it's like you have an online gallery that's episodic, and we just keep seeing new and new things, but it's like the whole collection, but we get the benefit of seeing it. It's like we get the benefit of going to an art gallery on Facebook every morning and seeing this daily drum. I often look at it and think, wait a second, how does he have enough ideas? How does he have enough images to do this for more than, say, 5 or 6 drums? I mean, How do you do that? Like, how is your art so prolific?
That could be, you could call it a tap, so of creativity, but I try not to let that tap turn off. To me, it's always going and always has abundance of ideas as constant. And we and the thing that I've learned too, that if you have an idea, I like to execute it and have it finished and on to the next one. So I don't have lots of unfinished pieces around. Generally, I it's a start and a middle and a finish, and that's one of the things. But you know I think it's just so the tap really isn't turned off. I let that happen. And uh, uh, so in the background, there's ideas percolating, and when they're ready, they'll come out. And so I'm fortunate that way. See, a lot of things that I wanted to do and technically wasn't possible then, or for one reason or another, and then like 2 years, 3 years later, it's possible. So a lot of things happened that way in my, so we ended up doing animation at one point, and then we're doing music now, and things just became available that, over time, and we take advantage of it because it's a learning process. You learn the art, you learn, and so now you can apply it when something, that the technical part of it is available, and this is what I like to do and use it and go in a different direction. You don't know where you're going, but it's just fantastic trip to go along this artist path.
I just love the origin story of the Daily Drum because I love Facebook for the fact that we can all communicate with one another, we can plan stuff, we can learn about our culture. I mean, there's people on there teaching language, teaching beading, teaching quill work. Like, there's just so many people. So, if you have the ability to just ignore like all the cranky stuff that happens on social media and just focus on the good stuff, I like social media for that. Now, I understand that you also have a newish art studio. Can you tell us what people can expect? Like, I'm assuming it's located at Millbrook. What days of the week is it open? And if they go to your art studio, what can they expect to see there?
Well, we've only been open a year. Actually, June 1st was the opening date, and was so our first year, and we've gone through one complete cycle now. But this is something new for me because up to now, I mean, I had a studio, it was a working studio. It was more of a workshop. Really wasn't a destination. I did have, guests come from time to time, but it wasn't really meant to be a storefront or a gallery, an open gallery. It really wasn't. But I produced my art from there, you know and then this opportunity in Millbrook and my community, so well, we're building these uh, uh, incubator malls, and would you like to try one? And so it didn't really occur to me until it was offered, and then I thought of it, and then I said, well, okay, I think we can do this, and it's been one of the best, I think, ideas ever for me because it's a place to showcase my art. It's a destination, but also a workshop where art creation, creativity. We're doing some creating every single day, and I try to paint every day. And then the band is set up there. The Thundermakers practice there and do performances, live streaming sometimes. But that's the home of the Thundermakers and Little Thunder and the Red Crane. All of that is here, and it's on Indigenous community. So you have to come to an Indigenous community and visit us if you want to see us, and the art is all over the walls, and I'm so happy to have it, and my family is helping me. They are involved in they work at my studio, so it's a family thing as well. So it couldn't be better for me.
I love that. And Millbrook's all just in general, Millbrook's always been on the forefront of economic development. You know, when you guys did the designation to have leased lands, it's like fast food places, business places. This art studio is just so amazing. I love how that collaboration and support from the community too. I mean, they have to know that that's going to attract people, the fact that your art studio's there. So, one of the places where you can find out more about what Alan does is Alan Syliboy website. It's got information there about the studio, the days that it's open, the hours that it's open, things like that. You can see some of the daily drum, you can see some of his prints. And correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the things on your website are for sale.
Absolutely. We do have art for sale, and we also have items. We have I have done lots of children's books. They're available, so you can get lots of books here. And then we also have the band's album. We have got a brand new album just came out called Marks on the Ground, and it's doing really well at the Indigenous Top 40. It's started out number 38. We are number 2 now, and that's gone very well. So the band is doing well. We opened for Emmylou Harris this summer at the Jazz Fest in Halifax, and we are um, just played Stan Rogers Festival, and also we're going to do Deep Roots festival in the valley this later this fall. So I mean, the band is very active and is doing well. We're having such a great summer.
That's fantastic. And so when people go onto your website, they're going to be able to find all of this stuff, your store, your artwork for sale, children's books, uh, and your band. Now, I would love to hear more about this band because it's one of the most, if not the most unique concept for a band that I've ever heard of. And I didn't realize that that's what you were doing. I thought you were doing two separate things. But can you tell the listeners a bit about Alan Syliboy and the Thundermakers and what makes this band so unique?
Well, it's led by an artist, which is not yeah, that's probably unique. It's I'm not a musician per se. I mean, I can do some. I play drums in the band. I've done. We've had another band before this one called Lone Cloud for 10 years with my son Evan playing guitar. He was just learning, and that's sort of our learning band. I think we now it's turned into the Thundermakers. Now we are, we have learned our how to be a band, and now we have a band that has uh, uh, 8 members in it, and then they're all incredible musicians on their own right. And so there's a lot of talent in this band, and we've done things like we played with the Nova Scotia Symphony Orchestra twice. We did 2 concerts with them that you can find online. It's on in YouTube. One is called the Fusion Sessions, and the other is the Gelasi Sessions. So those 2 videos are available that you can see. And then the last one, the Gelasi one, uh, that a lot of that material ended up on a new album. So we have a trilogy of whale songs. We have Hubert Francis from Hilton Bucktook, and I've known him since 1969 from early days, and we're making music together and traveling the road still, and we're having a great time. So we use a lot of Hubert's material. Morgan Tony joins us as well, and so the band is very active, and we're having such a great time. And we did go to the Toronto Indigenous Music Summit, International Indigenous Music Summit this year and last in June, and that really gave us a boost how to be a band and how to promote our band. And we are independent; we don't have an agent, and we are doing well. So so we're kind of a we just figure it out, and we just go ahead and try to do it.
Seems to be working, and the fact that you're doing it without an agent, you guys have got this under control. But I'd love to know what made you think to combine spoken word, because that's an art in and of itself, and a band. Like what made you think that those two things could go together?
Well, yeah, I think in the first band we did a bit of spoken word, and it was I didn't do it, but my daughter did a little bit of it, and
Mm.
like we did one called "I Lost My Talk" by Rita Joe, and my daughter would say it in English, and Hubert Francis would answer in Mi'kmaq. So the two
Oh.
languages, and that was really the start of our spoken word pieces, and that was almost 20 years ago. So when we started the new band, I did a song before, or I wrote where owls when owls call, and that sort of morphed into a spoken word piece. And we had an animation that was made for that piece. So we play the animation when we do it on, but it's a message that a lot of people need to hear. It's about we have to prepare for a time that we are going to be on our journey, and
Mm.
it's that book actually has done really well, and it's been received quite well. So I appreciate the messages that in the band we do Mother Earth's Warning that Hubert wrote, and we did that as a video, and we have over I think 5 or 6 thousand hits on that, and that's one of our new videos as well. You can see on YouTube, and that's number 2 on the charts. So we're very pleased about our progress of this band.
I want 5 or 6,000 hits on my YouTube videos. I wanna be like you. So for people who want to go and listen or look, at that on YouTube, what is your YouTube channel handle? Like, what name is it under? Just your name, your Thundermakers?
I
Where can
think
they
it's the
find that?
Thundermakers. Yeah, it's my
Okay.
son actually takes care of all that. I have to I have to give jobs out there. I have to delegate because we are doing many things at the
Yeah.
same time. So my son Evan is taking care of that part of it. But yeah, I think it's the Thundermakers
Oh,
YouTube channel.
good. I didn't even realize it was on YouTube. And for anyone who wants to check out Alan Syliboy's website, obviously I'll post the links in the description box of this podcast, the YouTube video, and social media promotions. But he also, as he mentioned earlier, sells children's books. Now, can you tell me about that? Do you just provide the illustrations for these books, or are you also the author?
Oh no, I do the writing as well, and like for instance, Little Thunder was part of the Stone Canoe book, and that was where I got I first saw Little Thunder, and the two stories that were considered to be in their natural or raw state was little the Stone Canoe and the woman that uh, on a abandoned island. And these two stories were not contaminated by another culture translating them. So they were still in their Mi'kmaq raw form. So they weren't translated. So they stayed intact. So that's why I like Little Thunder and that story, because I know it's a legitimate Mi'kmaq story, and so that's the reason that you see Little Thunder, and that's really how we got together. I did an art show with Little Thunder, and then I did a little like 5 minute animation. I had uh, help
Oh,
from the community college in Truro. They had an animation program, so
cool.
I had volunteers and they helped me with it. And Lucas Pierce is our bass player, but he does all the projections and so on. with the band and everything. But he helped me put that projection together in my art show. We had it at the Lord Beaverbrook Art Gallery, and that was where Little Thunder really got his start. And
No.
also we did Little Thunder at the Vancouver Olympics uh,
Oh,
in
wow.
2011, and Little Thunder was made by the NFB. We won a competition to get that animation made, and Nancy Ackerman uh, was a director, and uh, and Peyton Francis was the animator on that as well. He's from Newfoundland. So we put that together, and NFB considered that one of the best. And they put it. They have a greatest hits show that they tour, and it's on it. So they consider it one of their best. So that's kind of how things happened, and just keeps one opportunity turns into something else, and that's the way life is, and I'm enjoying it.
It's incredible when I went to your website to do, even more research. The things I thought I knew about you, as an artist and the Daily Drum and things that I see all the time, and to go on your website and to see, wait a second, he's got kids books. He's got, Alan Syliboy and the Thundermakers. He's got the drums. He's got artwork. Like, you've got so many things on there. And you also sell clothing. One of the things I saw on there was a picture of what looks like an adult and two small children.
Yes.
On a hoodie, you can buy clothing on there. But I'm really curious to find out a little bit more about that particular design. Is that an adult with two children, or is it three children?
Oh, that's a family design. That's a print from like 1990s, probably middle 90s. I did a series. Mother, grandmother, grandfathers at that same period. Those print series was all at the same time around, and that's when I went to Japan, and so I needed to have prints that were simple and colors. That's the three color
Yeah.
or four color maybe, and that's the reason I sort of simplified my design. But I thought that was, and it went over really well in Tokyo, and so we sold lots of shirts there. And I had an agent for a couple of years in Tokyo, so that kind of has always kind of been there, and it also so they're available at our store as well. So it's from the old Red Crane series, the classic Red Crane shirts, and they're still available.
Wow. I mean, you're 1,000 times cooler than I originally thought you were. And I already thought you were over the top, but that's just amazing. I can't wait to order that because whenever I see, say, an adult and two kids, because I have two sons,
Mhm.
those are the kind of pictures that I'm really drawn to because it speaks to my reality. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I'm totally doing an order there. But I'm wondering if I can ask you some, I don't even know what you call these, if these are political questions or current issues in the art world, but they relate to things like cultural appropriation. So there's a lot of large, sometimes international companies that are scrolling through social media, seeing images like artwork that artists have done, and then they just mass print them and sell them. Or they'll see beadwork and then they will mass produce those and sell them. Like, how big of a problem do you find cultural appropriation, especially of Indigenous peoples, to be? And have you ever been impacted by that?
I don't think directly, probably indirectly, but not sort of directly. But there's like blankets that are sold that are not indigenous at all. Dream
Mm.
catchers is actually a sample of that. It started out probably as a indigenous item that was produced by local people, and then it kind of blew up, and that kind of went like uh, so that kind of thing happened. And I did lots of trade shows and years ago, so I would see that. I would see, indigenous, uh, uh, Inuit designs on soapstone that were not even uh, they weren't even uh, they're not native companies, and I see that, and we complain about it. So, the thing is that you got to do research. You got to do research. Where is this coming from? Who are the
Mhm.
people? And we're fortunate because we live in a Millbrook First Nation. Here we are. You can come here. You buy directly from us, so it's the real item, and so that's the only way to combat that. Yeah, it's going to be there. It'll always be there, but we have to put up a fight. I think uh, Indigenous tourism now are making a new label system that's going to be accurate. That you have to be,
Wow.
there's a lot of steps to get these verification tags, and we're going to have them, and that's going to help a lot because if it doesn't have this tag, it isn't the real item.
It's not just large companies appropriating indigenous art for mass production, but sometimes it's individuals pretending to be native and they're not native at all for the purposes of being able to sell stuff too. And I think of, say, a well intentioned Canadian who says, hey, I want to support Indigenous artists. I want to be part of reconciliation. I want to help support the economy. I'm going to go buy some Indigenous art or some Indigenous beadwork, quill work, earrings, like, whatever. But how are they supposed to know? It's one thing for me, like I can say, look at something and say, oh, yeah, that's signed by Alan Syliboy. I can go to the res and check it out and buy it directly. But how are well-intentioned Canadians supposed to be able to do that? So I hadn't heard of this verification system. And I think that's such a really good idea because it helps direct people. It helps people know if it's authentic or not. And I think about they have the same thing for native businesses. You can go through a verification process now where you have to prove that you're actually native, and then you get like a little logo and things like that. So it's kind of in the same line, and I think that might help curb some of that problem.
Oh, absolutely. And if it's adopted the way it should be,
Yeah.
it should really help a lot because it's probably just going to get worse if we don't do something. And yeah, Indigenous tourism is on this. I don't think it's been launched yet, but it's going to be launched soon. I know it's being developed and should be close to being ready. So we're signed up, and they're signing up people, and I really like that process. I think it's long overdue. I mean, it's been tried before, but it
Mhm.
hasn't. It sort of didn't stick. Now this time, hopefully, will stay with us, and we can. It'll really help us be authenticated the way it ought to be.
Exactly. And do you think that the new world of generative AI, I mean, there's so many of them now, especially the ones that create videos or they create images. You just say, hey, make an Alan Syliboy type art and add this and this and this, and then poof, out this comes. Do you have any concerns about AI? I mean, I know tech can be tools, but tech can also be problems sometimes. But love to get your thoughts.
Well, I think yeah, it's definitely there, and it's a world problem. It's for everybody,
Mm,
because what is real, what's not real. I mean, we're going to have to find ways to combat that, and we're going to have to do research, and because I know, if you have images on the internet, I'm sure there's a clone site somewhere that has them
mhm,
all, and so you've got to make sure that that you are not being you're on the in the right place with
mhm.
so yeah, it's a problem, definitely, but hopefully we can win this battle.
Yep, buy direct. Whether
That's
it's going in store at Millbrook, if you're around
right.
there, going online and buying things, buying from artists when you're at exhibits or all the different places. Like some of their artists sell at powwows, some of them sell at like really big gatherings of leaders and things like that. Those are the best places, as far as I'm concerned, to get stuff. And so I know we're just about at the end here, but there's two questions that I always get asked, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. So the first one is really, what do you say to young people who are very creative? They feel like their life purpose is to be a painter or someone who draws or someone who beads or someone who does quill work. Like they want to be an artist for lack of a general term, but they don't feel like they're good enough. They think, there's no way that my work will ever be appreciated. What kind of advice can you give to those young people who want to be artists, but they are a little bit insecure about it?
Well, absolutely. It's just part of being a human being, especially when you're young. You don't have confidence. You have to build that up. That's a really hard one because even for me, when I started that, am I good enough to be an artist? What, am I wasting my time? And these questions, were there for a long time. And then, it's just that I felt a need to do it, and I would do it every day, and I would just work at it, and eventually, it came to a point where I had to do it. I mean, I could not stop being an artist or being who I am, and that was part of who I was. So, if the best advice I could give somebody young is, I was at the art college, and I had there was an artist from Singapore, and she told me that she tried to do 20 minutes of art a day, like discipline wise. She would
Hmm.
make herself do 20 minutes every day. And I thought, that's a good idea. I never thought of that, to organize it that way. It wouldn't occur to me, but
Hmm.
she passed that on to me. And that's what I did. I tried to work every single day. And then you have something, then if you're going to get, that this is for you. But just to be constant, and it's like anything. If you're playing violin, you have to practice. It's the same with art. The more you do it, and then those those questions are answered. To me, you just work every day, and then you have internet, and you have an audience that you can build. That wasn't possible when I first started.
Exactly. And I'm presumably, as with anything, whether you're a writer or a musician or a painter, that the proof of concept, so to speak, your success isn't always instant. It's not like, oh, here's my very first painting. People either like it or they don't, and that'll decide whether or not I quit. Like sometimes it doesn't come till years later, right?
Well, if I think about myself, I am definitely the turtle, not the hare. It took me all this time to get where I am. So, you know, but yeah, definitely it took a long time. There
Mm.
was a lot of struggle. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. It's being an
Mm.
artist is a very a difficult thing to be, especially, you're trying to make a living, trying to get by. But I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I mean, I am
Aw.
happy with who I am and where I am. I couldn't be happier. So, this is, to me, it's a thrill to be here, and to have all this around me, and I look forward to every day.
That's amazing, and such good advice for young people, just follow your dreams, put the work in, and everything, will resolve. It won't be without challenges and struggle and heartache, I'm sure, but just stick with it. And I guess the last question for this amazing show you have just shared so much great information, is what can Canadians do to support Native artists? There's lots of Canadians now who want to be an active part of reconciliation, not just in terms of like saying a land acknowledgement, for example, but actually doing their part. And everybody has their own way of doing their part. But for how can they support Indigenous artists? Because some Canadians have asked me, I'm worried that it's cultural appropriation if I buy a painting or if I buy a drawing. What would you say to Canadians who want to support Indigenous artists? Can they do that?
Well, if you support the artists, you're taking action. But that's benefiting the artists.
Mhm.
That is supporting the artists, and that's reconciliation. That is something that's an action. That is great. I find too in the Maritimes, compared to BC or out west, there's Indigenous art everywhere. You can't go anywhere without seeing it, and it's not the case in the
Mhm.
Maritimes. There wasn't a market when I started, but now that's
Mhm.
changing. Now we're
Mhm.
getting pieces, the public art pieces, more and more, and by different artists, and so we're getting to be visible. But to me,
Mhm.
that's good because that's a change. That's something that wasn't there before, and now it's a reminder. Here we are, and it's something that is very positive, and I, I I appreciate that it's starting to happen now. So that is a good thing. It's slow starting, but we are starting to make progress in the Maritimes. And like when I was being an artist, young artist, there was no art market at all, none. I couldn't get a gallery in Halifax because you're the only one. What do we do with
Mhm.
you? There's no there wasn't a group of us. There was just me, and they didn't want to do so. For a long time, I didn't have any representation in Halifax or for spotty at times. So I had to sort of do it myself, and that's changed now, but it took a long time for that to happen.
And it's great. I love seeing it. I went to the Fredericton airport and there's Percy Sakobi's art. He's from the Wolastoqey Nation and it's about a Wolastoqey story and it's huge. And it's like, wow, because that's what you see in Vancouver airport, for example. You'll
Yes.
see representations. And just to see that, it's like, okay, finally, Maritimes are catching up. So, Canadians, if you want to support Indigenous artists of any kind, yes, it's okay to buy their artwork. And yes, it's okay to share that. You can gift that, but it helps with our economy. It helps support artists. It helps us, buy tools that we need. So, yes, Canadians, support. Buy, 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 buy. And so what I'll do is make sure I leave links to your website so people can go on there, check it out, and see what ways they can support you. Alan, I can't thank you enough for being on my podcast. I'm such a huge fan of you and your work, and I just love hearing about your life experiences, and you're so humble about it. You're clearly so thankful and appreciative for all the opportunities that you've had. I love the advice that you gave to young people. I think it's really, really important. So thank you so much for joining me.
I enjoyed this very much. I appreciate we're getting the word out, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Till next time, keep living a warrior life. Balalut.